I've done a number of things, but the single biggest thing is bringing more people into my organization, and I don't mean employees, albeit I have employees, but bringing in joint venture relationships. That's probably been more, it was more powerful than I could have comprehended. Going to other people and finding out what it is they can do that would have utility for me, and then in return having to reciprocate, having to make sure I can give something back to them, that has just been an absolute godsend. I mean, it has created opportunities that in most cases I probably wouldn't even have imagined were available. We're just visiting in the hallway about one of my joint venture affiliate friends who in the last, I'll say 2 months now, has made $500,000. Now, he made $500,000, well, so did I, and that was essentially over 2 teleseminars. You're gonna, who could have predicted that? But now the good news is we're replicating on a regular basis.
Perfect. If you had to start over, what would you do differently?
I've had to start over about 6 times in my life. So I'm probably the best guy in the whole world to ask this question and then try to answer it. And I think the answer for every one of us when we're starting over, and most of us sadly are going to get that opportunity again, either now or next or later, and that's just the way life works. Those people who try to achieve, the people who try to accomplish something, almost always they will stumble somewhere. Something will happen. It's just part of that process. It's like the reverse side of that same coin, and yet most people, when they have to start over, they don't know where to start or what to start with. Well, take it from me, a guy who has succeeded and failed probably more often than anybody I know, and I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but in kind of a humble, experiential way. You start with your inventory. You don't start with your things, you don't start with all the stuff you've accumulated over the course of your life. You start with what do you really have that they can't take away from you. Because even after the greatest failure, you still have that. You still have your core character, your core principles, and if you're really, really lucky, you'll still have your family, you still have your friends, and you'll still have your faith. And those 3 things, along with your character, let you restart as many times as you need to, and hopefully it won't be as many times as I've had to.
What type of marketing is working for you today?
Say that again, please.
What type of marketing is working? The question I want to know is, we've all tried different types of marketing. What marketing do you like that's specifically working for your business?
The marketing that's working best for me is, we'll call it old school. I use print media. So I'll use national magazines like Money, Fortune, Fortune Small Business, although that's just gone out of business recently, and USA Today and Wall Street Journal. My audience happens to be business people and entrepreneurs, people who read those kind of type of magazines. So I find that by putting myself where they are, I have a much higher likelihood of drawing a connection with them. Other people in the, call it the new media, wanting to use Facebook, Twitter, and those kind of things, they work, and they work really well if that's who your audience is, and that it's not my audience. That doesn't have much appeal for me. So I'm kind of a print, TV, radio guy.
What's been your greatest aha moment in the last year?
Probably the one I mentioned earlier, finding out the value of reciprocity, finding out the value of what people like in this meeting, and we're here at Sang4, where it's a whole group of people who, every one of us, if I can say that, are good at something in our own right, respectively, but when we come together, when we kind of work as a team, we start helping each other, it becomes absolutely astounding what we can accomplish. And a classic example is my book. I launched it last year, and it was my second book, and the first one was okay. It just wasn't a great marketing success because I used my tools, I used what I knew, and that didn't work real well. The second book, I used my friends at Sang to help me promote it, and it became an Amazon worldwide #1 bestseller. By 6 o'clock in the morning, it was already at #6. By 8 o'clock in the morning, it was #4, and by noon, it was #1 worldwide. And the only difference is, the second book, I brought some people in to help me through joint venture arrangements that I didn't have the first time around.
Can you start just saying the greatest aha moment I had recently was reciprocity? We just go for just a little bit, and then we can edit it out there.
Okay. Well, the biggest aha moment I've had this year, and maybe for the last several years, is the true value of reciprocity. And I know Harvey McKay has been here today, and he has one definition, and all of us, I guess, have a right to have our own. But my theory of reciprocity is you give first. We all want to understand the concept, and most of us say, oh, I get it. I give you something and you give me back. But most of us are waiting for the other person to give us before we give. Well, my theory very simply in life is give and mostly you'll get it back. Not all the time, not always from that person, and there will be plenty of times you get taken advantage of. That's okay. This is the law of large numbers. If you can get 90% of the people you do something good for to give you something back, and only 10% abuse the privilege, wow. Think of how far ahead you'd be as compared to the guy who says, well, I'm only going to do something if you do it first. Well, very few people are going to go first. Be a bigger person. Go first.
The one thing that changed my career was at age 26, I left a very safe heaven in being a successful envelope salesman, and I struck out on my own. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, still have trouble spelling the word, but that's what I wanted to be. And I bought an insolvent company with a different name on it called PayPar Envelope Company. And for 2 years, I did not change the name of the company because if I went under, if I went bankrupt, I didn't want my name on the building, my name on the door. So 2 years later, I changed it to McKay Envelope Company, and I was proud that I felt that I'd really made it in the business world after 2 years of meeting payrolls.
Perfect, thank you. What was the greatest challenge?
Now we're going to wait. Just, okay, pause. What's the next one?
Next one is, what was the greatest challenge you had to overcome?
Okay.
So what is the greatest challenge you had to overcome?
The greatest challenge I had to overcome was early in my career when we had a couple hundred people on the payroll at McKay Envelope Company. We had a strike in Minneapolis, Minnesota for the better part of 10 weeks. That was uphill into the wind with a lot of problems. And of course, I had visions of maybe, wow, we wouldn't make it because we hadn't been in business that long. But teamwork, togetherness, persistence, confidence, faith, we beat the odds. And of course, I'm still standing here.
What advice would you give to someone who's starting new? So what advice would you give to someone who's
For someone starting new?
Yeah, someone who's just starting out, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, hang on, let me think.
No problem.
All right, I'll just wing it. Okay. Just start in? The advice that I would give to anyone starting new would be as follows. Number one, even the Lone Ranger had Tonto. You cannot, under any set of circumstances, do it by yourself. You need advisors, you need counselors, you need mentors. Believe me, I've always felt the following. When a person with money meets a person with experience, here's what happens. Person with the experience winds up with the money, and the person with the money winds up with the experience. So without question, use those mentors, use those counselors, use those advisors.
That's beautiful. I love that. Last question. If you were to start over, what would you do differently?
That's a tough one. When you've had a lot of success, that's a tough one.
Or if there's a better
No,
question.
well, you got any other questions?
Yeah, I got lots.
Oh, yeah.
What are you most passionate about now? What project are you excited to be working on?
Okay. All right. Well, I'm most passionate now about, quite frankly, the years that are to come. That I haven't hit my stride yet. I think maybe someday on my tombstone, the words should say, "He couldn't sleep fast enough," which means every time I get up in the morning, I can't wait to get rolling. I have a new book out, passionate about the new book. Got another new book coming out in 6 months, starting 2 new businesses. So to be candid and frank, I'm on overload, but I love it.